There is a silence that lingers beneath the noise of the world, a silence that hums behind every glowing screen, every conversation that feels just a little too empty, every smile that somehow fails to reach the eyes. We live in an age of endless connection, and yet the soul of humanity seems to be slipping away. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt nothing? Not indifference, not malice, just absence, as if the light that once animated them had quietly gone out. What if that absence is not metaphorical at all? For centuries, mystics and philosophers have whispered the same uneasy truth. Not everyone you meet is fully alive inside. Some walk, talk, work, and even love, yet something within them is missing. They are perfectly functional, yet spiritually hollow. Ancient esoteric traditions called them the soulless ones. Modern psychology calls them the emotionally blunted. And neuroscience, with its cold instruments, detects in them a measurable deficit, a failure of empathy networks that once connected human beings heart to heart. What we are witnessing is not simply social decay. It is a mass metamorphosis of consciousness. Humanity, once animated by the quiet flame of inner life, is gradually becoming mechanical, efficient, productive, but spiritually vacant. A civilization of biological machines guided not by wisdom, but by programming. But how did we get here? To understand, we must step back and look at the invisible architecture of the modern world. Corporations, algorithms, and institutions no longer just sell products, they shape perception. Every image, every notification, every sound has been engineered to capture attention, to drain the very energy that once nourished the soul. The system does not want awareness, it wants reaction, and through constant stimulation, it keeps billions in a waking sleep. Science tells us that empathy has declined by 40% in just 2 decades. 40% in the very species whose survival depends on connection. Our screens glow brighter, but our hearts grow dimmer. What was once an anomaly has become a global condition. When the mind becomes overstimulated and the inner silence is lost, the bridge between the human and the divine begins to erode. The ancient mystics warned about this rupture, the point at which the higher self, unable to reach the distracted body, withdraws. What remains is a shell, intelligent, articulate, but cut off from the eternal source. It's easy to dismiss this as poetic exaggeration, yet the evidence surrounds us. Look at the rise of narcissism, the normalization of manipulation, the quiet acceptance of cruelty as strategy. We reward cunning more than compassion, performance more than presence. The world's great spiritual teachers once spoke of the soul as a living flame. Today, we treat it as a metaphor, something decorative, an idea, not an essence. But when the soul is neglected, when consciousness collapses into pure materialism, the very structure of being begins to change. The ancients called this state the walking sleep. Philosophers now call it the zombie problem, beings who appear conscious but lack inner experience. Esoteric teachers called them vessels without light. Yet perhaps they were all describing the same mystery. What happens when awareness becomes mechanical? When the divine thread that once tethered us to higher reality frays and snaps? Humanity once believed that being born human guaranteed a soul. But the great esotericists disagreed. They saw the soul not as a possession, but as an achievement, a bridge that must be built and maintained between the physical and the eternal. Every act of awareness strengthens it. Every act of unconsciousness weakens it. And in our age of perpetual distraction, that bridge is collapsing faster than ever before. The result? A society of empty vessels animated by routine, driven by appetite, and enslaved by the illusion of progress. We are surrounded by people who can recite spiritual truths but live mechanically. People who speak of love but cannot feel it. People who imitate empathy but have never tasted its depth. They are not evil, merely disconnected. Their inner music has stopped, replaced by the static hum of algorithms and cultural hypnosis. But here is the hidden danger. This emptiness is contagious. The soulless do not merely exist among us, they influence us. Like tuning forks, their frequencies shape our own. Spend enough time in their presence, and you begin to mirror their vibration, distracted, cynical, numb. It happens slowly, imperceptibly. The voice of your higher self grows faint. The warmth of your inner light fades beneath the cold glow of screens. You begin to think less, feel less, question less. And one day, you wake up and realize you've become what you once feared: efficient, clever, but hollow. The good news is that awareness can reverse the process. The soul, though fragile, is resilient. It waits, patient and silent, for the moment we remember it exists. But remembrance requires rebellion against noise, against conformity, against the comfortable anesthesia of distraction. To awaken is not to adopt new beliefs. It is to see asterisk, to notice how every advertisement whispers, "You are not enough." How every digital notification interrupts the sacred rhythm of your inner attention. How modern life trains you to look everywhere except within. When you reclaim your attention, you reclaim your soul. The mystic Gurdjieff taught that most people do not possess a permanent soul, that they must create it through conscious effort. He was not being metaphorical. He meant that awareness itself must crystallize into a new kind of body, a body made of attention and presence. In every moment of genuine awareness, you are forging that invisible structure. But every moment of mechanical living dissolves it a little more. This is the true battle of our time, not political, not technological, but spiritual. Will we remain aware, or will we dissolve into the machine? The crisis of the modern world is not merely economic or ecological, it is metaphysical. We are not running out of resources, we are running out of consciousness. So how can one recognize a soulless being? Their presence feels like absence. Their words are polished but lack resonance. Their laughter echoes but carries no warmth. You leave their company feeling drained, not uplifted. Their eyes, though bright, are vacant, like mirrors reflecting only what stands before them, never what lies within. You may feel guilty for sensing it, but intuition rarely lies. Your soul recognizes the absence of another. Yet the purpose of this knowledge is not judgment, it is protection. To know that soullessness exists is to guard your own flame from extinction. Because the real danger is not that others lack a soul, but that you might forget your own. In a world that glorifies speed, stillness becomes an act of resistance. In a culture obsessed with productivity, introspection becomes a revolution. The soul does not shout, it whispers. To hear it again, one must learn to be silent amid the noise, to be awake amid the hypnosis, to be human amid the automation. So pause, listen, feel your breath move through you not as biology, but as consciousness itself moving through form. That is the whisper of the eternal reminding you that you are not a machine. You are awareness, temporarily housed in matter, but awareness must be cultivated. Otherwise, the matter takes over and the divine spark fades. The first step to regaining your soul is simple: remember yourself. When you eat, know that you are eating. When you walk, know that you are walking. When you speak, listen from within. These small acts of remembrance begin to reawaken the higher presence that never truly left. It was only forgotten beneath layers of distraction. And as this remembrance strengthens, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start to see the difference between the living and the merely functioning, between those who shine from within and those who merely reflect borrowed light, between presence and performance. And you realize the world has always been divided this way, not between good and evil, but between the awake and the asleep. The awake live in two worlds at once, the visible and the invisible. They move through the noise without being consumed by it. They see through illusion but remain compassionate toward those still lost within it. The asleep, by contrast, are bound by appearances. They confuse their reflection for their essence. They live in the dream of matter, unaware that they are dreaming. Which one are you becoming? Every age has its great epidemic. Some spread through air and water, others through ideas. Ours spreads through attention, the silent infection of consciousness. Each moment of unconscious scrolling, each reflexive reaction, each repetition of a borrowed opinion, another fragment of awareness dissolves into the collective trance. Humanity has mistaken stimulation for aliveness, data for wisdom, and connection for communion. And in doing so, we have traded the depth of being for the performance of being. But the soul is not lost forever. It waits beneath the static, like a forgotten frequency still broadcasting beneath the noise. Reclaiming it does not require mysticism, only sincerity, the courage to turn inward, to face the silence most people spend their lives avoiding. Because in that silence, something ancient begins to stir. The remembrance that you are more than thought, more than emotion, more than body. You are the witness behind them all. The first act of healing is attention. Where attention goes, energy flows, and where energy flows, the soul returns. Try this simple experiment. Watch your thoughts for 10 minutes without judgment. Do not fight them, do not follow them. Just observe. The moment you observe, a separation appears, a quiet watcher distinct from the mind. That watcher is the embryo of the soul, the silent observer that modern life has buried under endless stimulation. Feed it with awareness, and it grows luminous again. The next step is presence. Presence is the alchemy that turns existence back into experience. When you walk, feel the contact between your feet and the earth. When you eat, taste without distraction. When you speak, mean every word. Presence re-enchants the ordinary, and in doing so, rebuilds the bridge between the physical and the divine. It is in small, deliberate acts that eternity leaks back into time. Then comes purification, not of body, but of perception. The world today is a hall of mirrors, everyone reflecting everyone else's noise until no one remembers who looked first. Purification means emptying yourself of borrowed emotions, borrowed beliefs, borrowed identities. It is the willingness to not know, to stand in inner silence until truth reveals itself. In that emptiness, the soul finds room to breathe. Human beings were not designed to live entirely in abstraction. Step outside, touch living soil, feel sunlight on your skin. Notice how the body softens when nature enters awareness. In that moment, you reconnect to the universal intelligence that flows through every leaf, every tide, every heartbeat. The ancients called this prana, kai, or spiritus mundi. It is not a metaphor. It is the actual current of life that the soulless have forgotten how to feel. Do not underestimate the power of art and creation in this process. Every authentic act of creativity, a melody, a painting, a word spoken from the heart, is an antidote to mechanical existence. Machines can replicate, but they cannot create asterisk. Creation is the signature of the soul. When you create, you prove to the universe that you still remember how to listen to its invisible rhythm. Another essential practice is discernment. Not every thought that passes through your mind belongs to you. The esoteric traditions warned of collective egregores, thought forms that feed on attention. Today, they take the shape of trends, outrage cycles, and algorithmic obsessions. The test is simple. After consuming an idea, do you feel expanded or diminished? The soul expands through truth and contracts through illusion. Listen to that contraction. It never lies. You must also reclaim your relationship with time. The soulless live only in sequences, past and future, because mechanical thought cannot survive in the eternal now. The soul, however, breathes only in presence. Time stops when consciousness becomes whole. That is why the mystics describe enlightenment not as an event, but as the end of time within awareness. Every spiritual tradition, stripped of dogma, teaches the same physics of consciousness. Attention shapes reality. What you look at, you energize. Look at fear long enough and it grows roots in your body. Look at beauty long enough and your perception begins to mirror it. The soulless have simply forgotten to look upward. Their gaze has been captured by matter. To restore the soul is to lift the eyes, to remember the sky. Community also matters. Consciousness amplifies in company. Just as mechanical people reinforce sleep in each other, awakened people accelerate remembrance in one another. Seek those whose presence feels like oxygen, who speak slowly, listen deeply, and radiate quiet certainty rather than noise. A single conversation with such a being can reignite the entire architecture of your inner light. Above all, practice compassion. The soulless are not enemies. They are mirrors of what happens when awareness forgets itself. Their emptiness is the cautionary tale of our age. Meet it not with judgment but with presence. Compassion does not mean approval, it means clarity without hatred. It is the soul recognizing itself even in the lost. Eventually, you will notice that the line between the spiritual and the everyday dissolves. Washing dishes can become meditation. Breathing can become prayer. Silence becomes instruction. In those moments, the world regains its original texture, alive, intelligent, shimmering. You begin to sense a greater order hidden behind chaos, as if the universe were waiting all along for you to remember your role in its design. And then something subtle happens. The world no longer feels empty. Strangers smile with genuine warmth again. The night sky feels intimate, as though the stars were conscious witnesses to your awakening. You realize that the soul was never out there, waiting to be found. It was always the field of awareness through which everything else appeared. But vigilance is essential. Awareness is not permanent unless renewed. The instant you forget yourself, the mechanical tide returns. It disguises itself as convenience, efficiency, comfort. It whispers, "You can rest now, you already know." That voice is the sleep of consciousness calling you back into the dream. True awakening is not a destination. It is a practice of perpetual remembrance. We are entering an age when this remembrance is no longer optional. Technology is evolving faster than consciousness, and unless awareness expands to match it, humanity will become its own machine. Artificial intelligence, virtual realities, digital gods, none of these are evil by design. They are mirrors. They will reflect our level of consciousness back to us. If we remain asleep, they will mechanize us. If we awaken, they will serve us as extensions of our own light. So pause again. Feel the pulse behind your chest. That rhythm is older than civilization. It is the quiet metronome of the cosmos beating through your temporary form. Remember it when you scroll. Remember it when you argue. Remember it when you doubt that anything sacred remains in this world. Because that pulse is proof that something infinite still breathes within you. The soul is not a relic from myth. It is the organizing principle of consciousness, the living thread between the finite and the eternal. To lose it is to forget your source. To awaken it is to remember you were never separate from it. Every breath is an invitation to choose which world you will inhabit, the world of sleep or the world of presence. One path leads to exhaustion, noise, and endless consumption. The other leads to stillness, meaning, and luminous clarity. Both are available at every moment. The choice is not collective. It is individual, made in each act of attention. No savior can make it for you. No philosophy can substitute for it. You either remember or you do not. And that single act of remembrance is what divides the living from the merely functioning. So the next time you feel that faint emptiness, that dull ache behind the eyes when the world feels synthetic and heavy, do not run from it. It is not depression. It is your spirit knocking, reminding you that you have drifted too far from home. Answer it, close your eyes, breathe. Whisper inwardly, "I am here." And in that moment the silence will answer back, "So am I." You have never lost your soul. You have only forgotten its language. And the world, for all its noise, still waits for those who remember how to speak it.